probably can't tell, I've attempted to go to the gym, and I've been told, even though I don't have much experience in this, that when you do start lifting initially, your muscles do start tearing. And but again, it's no pain, no gain. So that pain is actually good, because what will result from that will hopefully gains, and hopefully better health, more strength, more agility, etc., etc. So how do you kind of reconcile the two?
Well, I mean, it's obvious that pain has a utility, and that's why, I mean, we're evolved to have pain to avoid certain things. And I mean, pain has a reason. But that doesn't mean that, I mean, that's not the kind of suffering that I'm talking about.
So just before you jump into that kind of suffering, so you're open to the fact that certain degrees of harm and certain pains can be good for you as well?
I wouldn't necessarily say good. I'd say that they have their utility in creating a better life for you, but that doesn't mean that, the gains what you gain from that experience, I don't think makes life justifiable.
So let's stick with the bodybuilding example. So you'd say it has utility, but that wouldn't necessarily improve your life?
It's not that it wouldn't improve your life. It's whether or not that life is worth creating in the first place, just to sort of have those gains.
Okay,
the gains from whatever small pleasures that you kind of get from that.
Okay, you're talking about the beginning, right at the beginning when you're born. I'm saying that if we take the principle of pain and harm, and an example of that is going to the gym. Can you see that there is? You described it as utility. I would actually describe it as, I'd describe it as something positive, effective, good, because of, for example, if you're stronger, it gives you more of a presence. You're able to defend your family. You're able to, say, pick up the shopping. You're able to play with your child. You're able to it helps with the experience of life. So how I'm just struggling to understand how that can be deemed to be that experience in itself, not in the totality of things. How would you deem that to be something of negativity?
Well, I mean, the pain, I think it's the pain that you experience doing that is negative, no matter what. It has a utility, but it's still pain. And I think, I mean, I don't think that we'd be arguing in good faith to say that, suffering is a positive thing. It can lead to some better things in your life, but that's for the person who's already experiencing those things, if that makes sense.
When you look at suffering, would you concede that we are viewing suffering using our smaller lens, our understanding of life and of experience? Often when we see pain and suffering, but when we ask the other person, they may not necessarily see pain and suffering like we're seeing it. For example, again, coming back to the gym example, somebody would say, you know what, I went there, I suffered and I struggled, I didn't like it. Therefore I came home and I'm not going to go there again. However, if he goes to another person who loves going to the gym, because again, the more you kind of discuss and you unpack this, you realize that just going to the gym, for many people, it becomes like once you get past a certain stage, you get a release of endorphins, you get confidence. I would argue that the positives significantly outweigh the minute nature of the harm or the negative that you get from there.
I mean, I think we all see our experiences as different. We all see different levels of suffering. Some see them as positive, some see them as negative, and we all have different values to our life. Some people really value being strong, going to the gym, pushing through that pain in order to have a more positive experience. But that doesn't overall say that, well, because this person views pain as a positive thing in these certain aspects of their life, that doesn't mean that suffering in itself is a positive. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that suffering has a utility, and it needs to. We have to say, we feel fire's hot, take your hand away from it. Suffering is a part of our genetic coding that is programmed in us to make us live. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that suffering is necessary to make us live, but suffering isn't a positive. Suffering is created by life. It is an inherent part of life for those who are sentient.
But then here's where we kind of take divergent paths. Sorry to cut you. It's that on the one hand we're saying we both agree that suffering is a bad thing, of course, by its nature. But
it has utility, but it's generally a negative experience.
Of course.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, you're saying that, hence, as a result, we need to stop procreating, whilst we're saying that because nature is inherent, you need to learn to manage it and to control it, and there are ways to have a positive life experience, net value. That it is possible to have a net value positive experience than, say, a negative experience. Go ahead.
I mean, that's definitely where we suffer. Definitely where we differ, is because I don't believe that there can ever be a positive net value to life. And again, that comes back to what we had discussed before about whether or not we assign moral weight to creating joy. I mean, I think another way to think of it is let's look at sort of the best possible experience we could ever have and the worst possible experience. And both happen, on a daily basis. People experience extreme amounts of pain and extreme amounts of joy. Just because they... I don't see, if you could either choose between having both that extreme amount of joy and that extreme pain, or having neither, I don't see anyone in good faith actually saying, yeah, I'll choose, being skinned alive so that I can, be in love.
I'm just going to cover something I really should have covered at the beginning,
okay.
Which is what that kind of leads to, which is, are you calling then for the end of civilization as we know it?
Yes, in so many words. I mean, anti-natalism is about sort of prescribing the problem, which is that birth and basically the DNA molecule...
I'm just going to move this hair in the middle if that's okay, yeah, because I think it's catching too much.
Anti-natalism prescribes the problem, and then how we then get to solve it is, in an ethical way, is our own product.
End of humanity?
Can I say?
Yes, so humans would, if we stopped procreating, of course humans would become extinct. And, I mean, I don't see what... Of course there would be, things that would be lost, but I don't see that being a net.
Can I say?
So when you've got approximately 8 billion people on the planet, and they are going to obviously die because no one's procreating, isn't that causing suffering and?
Well, that they're going to die anyway, and that's part of the an important part of the whole equation is that everyone is going to die.
That's wrong.
Not only that, but we are heading, with the way that we're treating the planet, we are heading into a really, really horrible death for ourselves and for the entire planet.
No, that's not the fault.
Many things have happened before. There have been, mankind has gone through peaks and troughs. There's been positives, there's been negatives. But this is it's a very pessimistic kind of view to say that because suffering's happening, therefore the solution of that is to just stop everything and just to allow us to kind of wipe each other out.
I think suffering is also a very minimalistic way to kind of look at it, and I think that we're all in a very privileged position to sort of say
No, that's a maximum. Suffering will be a maximum suffering, not a minimalist.
There's suffering, there's joy. I think that there are people out there who are suffering in really, really immense ways.
Yeah, but it's going to get a lot worse.
What about the people that aren't suffering in immense ways? The people that
we all suffer, and again, I think this also comes down to the difference that we have in the fact that you believe that there can be a net positive, and I don't. And again, that's weighing all the positives of the positive things that can happen in life, and all the negative things, and whether or not that risk is worth taking.
So Sarah, what you're doing is you're basing it upon your kind of subjective experience, your limited understanding. Would you accept that you've come to this conclusion based upon your limited observations? You haven't observed everyone's life. You
No,
haven't,
of course
yeah.
not. I mean, that would be absurd to say that
course.
I've observed everyone's life and I've experienced everything.
Precisely.
But, there are certain things that's the only way that we can interpret the world. I mean...
So the way we interpret the world that you've suggested is induction, which is a process used by science as well, which is you take your limited observations, and when you see there's consistency in there, you come up with a hypothesis. And that hypothesis is open to being refuted. It's open to being challenged.
Yeah,
Would you say this is a hypothesis, or would you say that this is an end, an end kind of? Are you treating this like a fact or like a working hypothesis? I guess is what
I mean,
I'm
it's
trying
a
to ask.
philosophy, so it's a way of viewing the world, which I can't convince her. I mean, everyone's going to believe that their
Of course.
hypothesis is right, no matter
Right,
what.
right.
And all I can do is convince you. I don't think it goes against anyone's values. Honestly, I think that it's if you believe that suffering is wrong and that birth creates suffering, we're kind of halfway there. It's whether or not you think that something more positive can be gained through life than not. I don't see that being an equation that we should impose on others. We could decide that for ourselves, and if we could, okay, you can decide for yourself whether or not you want to live, but you shouldn't impose that on somebody else. Taking into account the suffering that they're going to cause others as well.
Where do you believe all of this started, and how do you believe everything started as you observe and as you understand?
Just everything altogether?
Yeah, I mean just the universe, earth, water, trees.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an atheist, if that's what you're going for. Believe in the Big Bang. There's a cosmic soup that created us. It was nothing intelligent. We came to be through just crude forces sort of mashing into each other.
So out of the options, do you believe it came from nothing? It created itself? I mean, you've said you don't believe that there's an agency, so I'm assuming there are two options. If there are more than these two options, feel free to let me know. One is that it created itself, the universe, or the other one, it was created from nothing.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I couldn't tell you.
No, this is not. This is again just like this is a hypothesis of yours, a philosophy of yours. I'm merely just trying to understand the mind of Sarah. I'm not going to pin you down and say, "Haha, I've got you."
Yeah.
I'm not here to do that. We're just here to have a conversation and just share and exchange ideas. So I'm just trying to understand your worldview, because to understand where things are going, it's very important to understand somewhat the beginning as well. So would you say that from your understanding, from your atheistic understanding, it came from nothing, or it created itself? Or do you think there's something else that possibly I haven't mentioned that you believe in?
I mean, I suppose it came from nothing. Nothing could exist before something.
So when we look at nothing by definition means the absence of something, isn't it? No thing means the absence of something, isn't it?
Yeah.
So from nothing, something emerges. It's a contradiction, isn't it?
Sort of, in a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, we can't really know for sure. We can only
And that's
have
fine.
hypotheses.
Yeah, of course. But what I'm saying,
I mean, what do you believe?
I believe out of the three options, the inference to the best explanation is if we look at the universe coming from nothing, again, that's a contradiction. If we say that the universe created itself, again, that's a contradiction because it presupposes a universe, isn't it? So the universe created itself. So the universe created itself presupposes the term universe. It's like picking yourself up from your bootstraps. It's not really possible.
Yeah.
Or a mother giving birth to herself. So I'm saying that the plausible explanation is, and this is again through whether it's rationality, even philosophy as well, you've got the likes of Leibniz and Kant and Aristotle. They didn't necessarily have an issue with believing that there was something at the beginning, that there was someone at the beginning of the chain. So for me as a Muslim, I believe that there is
Jacob was not Jesus.
did it happen before when you guys were here?
Yeah.
Okay, I think he's just making his rounds. Okay, so as a Muslim, I believe that there is a creator, and when you look at philosophy, rationality, and all of these things, it points towards some form of creator. Yes, we can. There's debates that can happen about who that creator is or what that implies, but to divorce a creator, for me, doesn't necessarily make sense, because the options to the contrary are, like you just said, come from nothing, creating itself, which don't really make sense, which we don't really live our lives by those principles of contradiction. So let me put this to you. Let's walk through this. So you and I, we're dependent. Does that make sense?
So dependent on what?
Yeah, dependent on laws, dependent on food, dependent,
Okay.
And what we're dependent upon, that's dependent on something else, and that's dependent on something else. So as the chain of dependency goes on, it's implausible to assume that there is an infinite regress of dependent things. Yeah? So logically, rationally, there has to be an end to that chain for us to even exist. I'll give you an example. If, for example, if I'm to throw this glove, I have to ask his permission. He has to ask his permission, he has to ask his permission. If it goes on ad infinitum, would I ever get to throw this glove? I wouldn't. So there has to be somebody at the end of the chain to say, you know what, stop, yes. And then it comes, yes, and then I get to throw it. So my argument is very simple. It's that you cannot have an infinite regress of dependent things. Otherwise, us being a dependent thing, we wouldn't be able to exist. What do you think about that? Does it make sense to you?
It doesn't make sense to me.
Feel free to challenge it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's. I mean, the way that we kind of look at these things is like the Occam's razor, which is just the easiest possible explanation. Not the easiest possible explanation, but the explanation that includes the least possible jumps. I don't see religion that way. But again, everyone's free to practice their own.
Of course.
And I wouldn't really. I don't really argue based on religion because it's just not. Again, it wouldn't really be in good faith for me to, because I'm an atheist. But I mean, I just don't. I don't think that's the easiest possible explanation, or the most logical for me.
So you believe that there is such thing as infinite regress then?
I mean, I don't know. I just don't think it exactly works that way. I mean,
Walaikum salam. Let me break it down for you in another way. Thank you, brother. Thank you. So Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." Yeah. So for us to even, be speaking to each other, we have to presuppose existence. There are three forms of existence: contingent existence, necessary existence, or an impossible existence. Yeah, we take impossible existence out of the equation because obviously it's impossible. Yeah, then you've got contingent and you've got dependent. You've got contingent and you've got necessary. We are contingent beings. We rely on something else.
Yeah.
And if you continue that on, because that actually goes in line with Occam's razor, because as Occam's razor says, that sometimes the simplest answer is the best answer. But again, sometimes, not always the case. So here, when you look at the things that's around you and yourself as well, you say you're dependent. That's dependent on something else. That's dependent on something else. And if we now start saying there's two options now, either there's an infinite regress or there's an end to that chain, based on your criteria of Occam's razor, it makes sense to say that, you know what, an infinite regress doesn't make sense because it would lead to other absurdities, contradictions. In fact, what is infinity? There's no such thing as a real life infinity. So to say that there is a logical end to that chain makes sense even in terms of Occam's razor. And this again is not something that's been contested by many kind of philosophers like Leibniz and Aristotle and even Kant of the past as well. So going in line with that, it's only when a person says, you know what, there could be an infinite regress. That's why. And I want to remove that discomfort from you, which is that you're saying, look, religion, I'm an atheist and this and that. We're just sharing ideas. I'm not going to be offended. You're more than welcome to give your opinion, and we can agree to disagree or whatnot. But I don't want you to kind of hold back and say, I don't want to. Just be honest. If you disagree with something, you disagree. I'm not going to hold you to it. But I just want to hear, because the reason why I'm linking it to obviously what you're saying, I don't want to retract or detract from that, is because because as Muslims and as theists, we believe that morality is objective. So we get morality from God. So if a person believes that it's subjective, then you're dealing with the harm principles, you're dealing with Kant's categorical imperative, etc., etc. So to pinpoint morality, it's predicated on the fact, and an integral part of the conversation is to bring in how everything came to being. Is there agency or is there no agency? Because once you divorce agency from the equation, that's when you then say that, you know what, as human beings, we need to take control of everything and we need to stop procreation. But when you're arguing with a theist, naturally you have to. It's going to be brought up of because they believe God, and God says procreate, and there is positives. Of course, the positives outweigh the negatives in procreation, and then what you're going to be, what's going to happen is you're going to be stuck in like a theological thing. You got one train going that way, one train going that way. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of align us onto one track, so we can have like a fruitful thing. So coming back to this point of an infinite regress, do you now understand why and how this argument kind of comes to being? When you look at existence, 3 types of existence, we're contingent, you have an infinite regress. Infinite regress is illogical. There has to be an end to that chain. I'm not saying it's God at the moment. I'm just saying an end to that chain from which we started. That's all I'm saying at the moment. If that makes sense, fantastic. We can progress. If not, feel free to tell me what, I can kind of correct for you.
I mean, it's just what something created something that created something that created something. I mean, it came from somewhere, whatever that something is whatever you believe in. I suppose I'm not really sure how it's relevant to.
I'll tell you how it's relevant.
I think that either way, we could still have the same moral arguments and conversations. Whether or not it's God or the universe, whatever created itself, or came from nothing. Again, I believe it came from nothing.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessarily relevant to right and wrong. I don't think that really has any moral weight, if that makes any sense.
Okay, so when you say something is right, you base it upon something that gives harm.
Yeah.
But when you look at, for example, somebody going to hospital, and when you go to hospital and you have an operation, maybe taking out a tumor or being operated on, even though you're going through pain and suffering, the net result is something positive, isn't it? Because it's increasing your life.
I mean, that would have to imply that...
Or do you argue that person has to die?
I mean, I think that's kind of the perfect example of what I'm trying to say, is that that person curing cancer isn't a net positive. That's reducing a negative. And that's all that I really see life doing, is we're just reducing the negatives that were caused when somebody was born. And again...
But sticking with the surgery thing, would you say that him undergoing surgery is a positive?
I mean, it reduces the negative.
Which
I mean, to me,
is a synonym
it's all
for
about
positive,
reducing
isn't it?
positive. It's